Hello, I'm Diana Kokoska, and here we are at Becoming More. Once again, now you're going to want to listen to this. If you've ever felt in your life like you were living in a cage that you just couldn't break out of, that you were in more of that survival mode, wondering where the next dollar was going to come from. Because everything rises and falls on leadership, as my mentor John Maxwell teaches. And today, Lucas Sherraden is with us, and Lucas and I have known each other for many, many years. And we think a lot alike because, see, we both believe that every one of us are living a story. And if you're not liking your story, well, then let's change that story. And we have the capability, each and every one of us, of changing a story of our life to the story that we desire. Yet it starts from going from survival to intentionality. And Lucas has written a new book that is coming out, The Uncaged Leader. It's about helping leaders recognize that invisible story that they are living, that the assumptions and the old programming that has shaped the way that they are leading. Now it's published August 11th. You can get it pre-ordered on Barnes and Noble. So let's welcome Lucas. And Lucas, I'm going to start out with a tough question. When in your life, or what was the moment that you realized that you were actually living in survival instead of intentionality?
Wow. There's so many moments. I think, and Diana, for me, probably the very first moment that I realized that there was an unseen cage, there was an unseen limitation, that my mindset was more powerful than just what I was consciously aware of, was I was just got into real estate in 2008. I had come out of 20 years of ministry, decided real estate would be a great career because I watched 3 episodes of House Hunters. And I'm that guy. And I went broke really quick. Went $100,000 in credit card debt. He was using credit cards to buy gas and groceries, and then lines of credit to pay minimums on credit cards. So I was using debt to pay debt. And I just made a move to Keller Williams about the same time. Was introduced to you and several of the programs that we were involved with there. But there was a moment in time when I was at a basketball game. My kids played for this little Christian school, so they played middle school girls, middle school boys, high school girls, high school boys, and I had 2 middle school girls and a high school boy. So we were there all afternoon. And somebody came up to me in the middle of the games and said something to this effect, said, "How is your real estate business, Mr. Sherraden?" And because we're all real estate agents, we say, "Oh, it's great. It's awesome." They go, "No, really, how is yours?" And I said something to the effect of some self-deprecating comment about myself, and said, "As if I will ever sell a house. Ha, 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 ha." And about that time, my 8th grade daughter, Danielle, who you know, came up to me in her basketball uniform, Diana. She looked up at me with her big brown eyes, put her hand on my right arm, and said, "You are a good real estate agent, aren't you, Dad?"
Wow.
And I answered her. I said, "Yes, I am." And I finished the statement in my head, and I wasn't 10 seconds ago. At that moment, I realized I needed to get out of the mindset trap that I was in that was causing me to go broke more rapidly than that was definitely not comfortable.
Well, and you know, I used to say that 90% of our success is our mindset. And now new research shows it's 95% of our success. Yet most people don't even realize what their mindset is. And they think that they're being okay because they're successful. Yet success can become a cage in itself.
I actually write that in the book, that you and I have been around and we've been in rooms with people that on the outside, numerically, statistically speaking, look like they're succeeding grossly. So, and yet that success becomes a cage, and they realize they climbed the ladder of success to realize it was leaned against the wrong wall, that they don't want that they didn't like the success. And now that they've succeeded once, wow, the people are going to eventually find out they were a fraud. They got lucky one time or what have you. That success becomes another cage. And if we're not careful and we're not aware that these stories that we're telling ourselves about whatever success is or whatever ambitions that we have, if we're not aware that we have the pen in our hand to author those stories, we are going to become victimized by the very success that we endeavored to gain so fervently.
Right. Success is a lousy teacher. And too many people have actually given the pen to somebody else to write their story. And as I say in my book, what kind of story will they write for you? Won't it be one that actually enhances them? Because they don't really care about your story. And yet in your book, you talk about awareness. We know awareness is the first step to change.
Yeah.
You say awareness is a leader's strength. Let's talk about that. Let's go into that. It's not soft. Awareness is not soft.
No, it's not. And I ran across a study, Diana, the research for this book, that Tasha Urich out of the Harvard Business School did a study in America on self-awareness.
Yeah.
I've discovered that 95% of Americans will tell you that they're self-aware, but only 10 to 15% actually are. So when I go into a room and they're sitting at tables of 10, I'm going to say, okay, at this table, all of you believe you're self-aware. Only one of you statistically is, and all of you are convinced you are that one. So when I realized that, and I think what she's getting to is most of us, our preferences are making decisions on our behalf. Mm-hmm. Our autopilot thinking are making decisions on our behalf, and we just call it normal. We call it fate in your language. Yeah. We just call it fate, that this is the way that I am. So this is the silly little example that I like to use is, Diana, if I put 2 tubs of ice cream in front of you, chocolate and vanilla, which would you choose?
Well, I would choose vanilla.
And why would you choose vanilla?
Because I like it better.
So here's the question. Did your preference for vanilla ice cream make the decision, or did you?
Yeah, that's why I said I choose vanilla, because
I can't trick you. I learned a lot of the stuff from you.
Well, you make a choice every single day, yet your preferences help us make those choices. And that's what you're talking about. You're talking about our perception, our mindset all comes together. And one of the things I know in your book, you ask a great question. What else could this mean? And I love that question about your perception, because we've already made up a story. When somebody's speaking, we've already made up a story.
People are doing it, we're 7 minutes into this podcast. They're already making up a story about this conversation. I like it. I don't like it. I remember when I got into real estate, one of the things you helped me with is, how do I make phone calls to people I don't know? Yeah. Because as a pastor, I wasn't going to contact the people that knew me as Pastor Lucas for real estate businesses. I didn't feel principle wise that was right. Wow. And so all I could talk to were people I didn't know. And yet I had so many stories in my mind. And it was because I'm afraid of rejection. It's because, and I would say things like this, Diana, I'm sure you've heard this a billion times. It's just not my personality.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a relationship guy.
It's just not who I am.
That's just not who I am. And those are all stories that, real honestly, I thought somebody else held the pen to write those stories for me. And when I realized, you know what? Those are stories that I authored. And if I authored those stories, could I author a story that actually empowers me versus disempowers me? So what else could this mean? You say, call it an expired listing. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be rude and impose on them. And it's not my personality. Yeah, you may be right. What else could it mean? Well, for me, guess what I did, Diana? I said, out there in MLS land, there's a couple right now at 8:15 in the morning praying a prayer saying, God, we've had our house on the market for 6 months, right, and our realtor won't call us back and won't come get their stuff. Could you please help us out today? Back to me in the car, God, I just want to call as many people as I can to find the person praying that prayer and be an answer to the prayer, and they don't even know it. That's what this is going to mean today. Now I have energy for it because that empowers me.
Yeah, the passion starts showing up, and passion is a great energy. And as we all know, that sometimes we get in this conflict in our mind, and conflict actually helps us bring clarity when we allow it to, and we look in the mirror, which is kind of awareness and clarity coming together, right? Yet, how many people don't want to look in the mirror? They want to point the finger at everybody else.
Yeah, it's far easier to tell tell me that it's the economy's fault, or it's the
Oh, yeah.
Democrats or Republicans' fault, or it's my brokerage's fault, or it's my coach's fault. It's my mom's fault. It's like whoever. It's like, let me blame shift to somebody else. And the moment I do that, I put the pen in their hand and I relinquish ownership. I remember having a mentor that used to tell me repeatedly, don't abdicate your power. And what I thought that meant, as a DI personality on the disc profile, I thought, well, become a little bit more assertive or a bit louder. No, it was never give somebody else the power to put me in a mood. Never give, like, you can't make me mad. You know why? Mad's inside of me. I get to choose what I want to be. You don't live on the inside of me. I have the pen for that conversation.
And you know what's interesting? Because in my book, I even talk about how you cannot be upset or angry unless you have something or someone to focus that anger upon. And in your book, you're talking about how you get to choose. Am I going to be angry over this, or am I going to choose something else? You also talk about failure. And I love John Maxwell's new book, Your Return on Failure, saying failure and success aren't this far apart. They're like this, that you learn from failure. Yet failure can be a cage when you want it to be. So let's talk about, how do we get failure and we put ourselves in a cage with it?
There is a huge difference in my mind, and language is important. I used to really diminish the words that I would say because, oh, they're just words, but words reveal, words create, words are powerful. There is an infinite difference between these two statements. I failed and I am a failure.
That's correct.
Whenever I fail, that's a moment in time. It's not my identity. It doesn't have to become. The moment I start saying I am a failure, I begin to take on that identity, and that creates a new reality where I have to, by my own dictate, by my own words, I have to continue to fail because I have just put it on as my identity. If I could get more curious and be more aware that says, I have failed. Now, what else could this mean? It could become a stepping block, not a stumbling block. It could become what catalyzes me into the next level of success and impact instead of keeping me trapped and repeating the same cycle over and over and over and over again.
Well, and you have a 5 o'clock formula that kind of brings that up. So
that's right.
Let's share with the audience about your 5 o'clock formula.
So if you think of how we create stories, at 12 o'clock, something happens, right? And Dianna, it's so fun to have this conversation with you because I actually think I learned this story model from you at a coach's skill camp. And you stood up there and you drew a clock and said, 12 o'clock, something happens, and we have no capacity to change what happens. At 2 o'clock, we have a reaction, which is usually the summation of all of our experiences up to that moment in time. At 4 o'clock, we start to form an opinion. We make a judgment. And at 6 o'clock, we make up a story.
Right.
Well, at 5 o'clock, I have a choice to make. That when I say this is good, this is bad, and before I start making up a story, well, what else could it mean? Right. What else could I make this mean? What else could this be? And then that cranks me into awareness and curiosity, and it gives me my agency back.
Yeah, see, I think sometimes people forget that they have agency, and they forget that other people have agency. And sometimes other people's agency causes problems for our agency, right? And yet we have to honor that part of it. And yes, you are correct. That is a model that I came up with many years ago, actually, before I actually even joined Keller Williams. And the interesting part is, and it's not actually, it's on a clock as you go around. Right. It's not you wait until 2 o'clock to have something happen. Right. So let's make sure they know that. Yet as you go around this, our brain wants us to look good and be right.
That's right.
So when we make up a story, our eyes are only going to see and our ears are only going to hear what our brain tells it to. And therefore, if our brain says, hey, here's your story, we're going to live out that story. And you're saying at 5 o'clock, hey, stop. What else could this mean? What other story could I have? And that's why success and failure have to be side by side.
Right. Because if
So,
like I look at, and I bet you actually, because I know some of your story, the Little Red Wagon, and
yeah.
I know some of your story, and you know some of my story. That if I look back, I'm 59 years old, and if I look back over the last, the 4 decades of a career,
Yes.
my worst moments became my best moments because they became launching pads to a new
Yeah.
level of thinking, to the extent that I did not take it on as identity. And I made the story say, okay, that didn't work. What else could it mean? And find ways that did work, or I didn't work, or whatever it is. And in leadership, when we're leading people, we
Yeah.
have to know that they're caught in stories, and it doesn't help anybody to tell them that they're caught in a story. Right. And it's like, if you want to
No,
start a
they go
fight
on
to
the
say, oh,
defense, right?
yeah, I can imagine. I think I heard you talk about you and Tony one time saying, well, that's your story. Well, that's your story. Now we have a conflict of stories, right? And it's like, but if I want to step into the world of unlimited possibilities, that awareness and that curiosity become the hinges for which I could do that. And it starts for
Yeah.
me with that 5 o'clock formula, which we talk about the story model in the Uncaged Leader. What else could this mean? Because that helps me get out of living reactively and starts helping me live proactively. And I'm not happening
Yeah.
as life influences me, but I'm happening to life. I become the agent.
Well, and when we're proactive, let's go back to that agency
Yeah.
because that's proactive. It's getting free from the old habits and moving into the new habits and the new story that we desire to live. So give me some aha moments that you've had, an aha meaning for our listeners that you went like, oh wow, that really means this. What were some aha moments that led to this particular book being written?
One early in my wealth building journey, a mutual friend of ours, David Osborne, had invited me to a mastermind. And I said, okay, I'm good with masterminds. And he said, I'm going to give you a great deal on it. And I'm good with a great deal. And he says, what we're going to talk about is your net worth. We're going to have 100 guys in the room, and they're all going to sit at tables of 10, and we're going to mastermind about your net worth. I said, awesome, I'm all in. He says, so what I want you to do is I want you to go print out your net worth sheet and make 10 copies of it and bring it with you. And I'm like, whoa, stop. And at that time, I think my net worth was like a negative $30,000. So I literally on a spreadsheet was worthless. And so I said, so David, you gotta be kidding me. I said, I'm from the Midwest. Money's a private issue. And so I said,
Oh,
so David, I said, I'm not gonna lie to you, because I knew not to say all those things to him because he would shoot
right.
all those things down. So I found the very good, distinguished, honorable way of saying something. I said, David, real honestly, the idea of sharing my net worth sheet with other people is quite intimidating. He goes, well, then maybe you're confused. I said, no, I'm very clear. I'm pretty intimidated by the thought of that. He goes, no. He said, who told you that the exact emotion you're feeling right now is called intimidation? And I go, what do you
Ooh.
mean? He goes, who labeled that emotion? I said, I did. He said, well, maybe then you're confused. Maybe you're really eager and excited. And every time you feel that, you're not intimidated. You're eager and excited to be where we are. Seriously, Dianna, every time now that I feel that emotion, even writing a book and publishing a book on leadership, I mean, we've got John Maxwell, we got Diana Kokoska, we got all these, like, honestly, the idea and the big ambitions I have around book sales, which is very difficult, I feel that same emotion. And instead of labeling it intimidation, guess what? I get to label it, I'm just eager and excited, because I will be powerful with eagerness and excitement. I'm not powerful with intimidation.
You know, when you were talking about intimidation, and I was just in Puerto Rico with a lot of people, we were raising money, and most everybody there was a billionaire. Okay. One gentleman had sold his company for $1 billion, had invested, and now he's a multi-billionaire, right? As net worth and many, many billions. One of the gentlemen that I was able to meet and converse with just gave $50 million to Austin Christian University to build a building. So I'm sitting there. Now I don't have $50 billion. Everybody knows that. Our mind can play tricks with us. And see, I'm like you. I got excited and I wrote down all the questions I wanted to ask, because you cannot be where somebody else is being until you think like them. You can't do what they do until you think like them. You can't have what they have until you think like them. And of course, we all want to go to significance more than success, helping other people and building that legacy. Yet it was a false certainty. I do believe it was a false certainty you were feeling. So how did you get over that false certainty and make it into a strength and
Yeah. So
killed that curiosity right there?
well, in that instance, I said, oh, wow, if I label it one way, maybe I can label it something else. So I opened my mind to, I think when we get into judgment, Diana, when we're like, this is intimidation. You can't convince me any otherwise. This is just my emotions. And we, if you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them.
That's
And
right.
so it's like, once I'm in judgment, which as a Christian, I think we ate from the wrong tree in the garden. We ate from a tree that gave us the capacity to judge instead of the tree that's supposed to give us life. And we weren't really designed to eat from that tree. So I don't think we're good at judgment. And so I think if we're
No.
more curious, and so when I got out of judgment and allowed myself to be open to another possibility, it's amazing that openness, open hands can receive a lot more than clenched fist and judgment.
Well, you know what's interesting about the judgment part? I don't know about you. God never came to me and said, hey, would you help me judge?
He's not asking for help.
I need some help right now. Diana, would you help me judge everybody else, right? And I know I've gotten into judgment. And yet, is it judgment or is it seeing something in someone that is so big? Because as a leader, I always believe that you take a stand for people's greatness more than they take a stand for their limitations. And sometimes people see that as you working to help people get their potential as a judgment as to what you shouldn't do. Or, well, let's face it, people are judging machines. And so then they love to write emails about other people. They love to say what's wrong with other people. And yeah, as a leader, that doesn't work, does it?
No, because I think leadership, and that's the point of the Uncaged Leader, is inviting people into a world of unlimited possibilities.
That's
And
right.
inviting people into a world in which you are created in the image of a creator. And so therefore, by very design, you are supposed to create, not just react to what already is. So how do I live in a world that out of nothing, I create something amazing and unlimited? And therefore, write a book, start a podcast, do what you're doing, Diana, or whatever it is, because I'm not going to, you had a really great illustration in your book, the Kanitsa triangle, where our
Yes.
brain automatically fills in lines that don't exist. And actually that white triangle in the middle actually seemed more pronounced and it had no lines around it.
I know, and
like,
yet so many
the
people
brain
see
does
it
that.
that way, right?
And that's the challenge is I think of leadership as like at the beach watching people ride the waves. There's people sitting on the shore watching and criticizing everybody else riding the waves. The second group of people says, let's go play, let's go out and ride the waves. But I think there's a third group that we don't see in that picture. They're the people who actually create the waves. And that's what I want us to do, is create things, because the world is yet to see what will happen when a mind is unlocked and uncaged and open to unlimited possibilities on a daily
That's
basis.
so good. You know, I think that's the big thing, is what possibilities are out there. And are we asking ourselves great questions about those possibilities and rebuilding? I have a statement: when you drink the water, don't forget who dug the well.
That's right.
So many leaders believe that they should control things, that they have that control. So you talk about curiosity. Let's go into that. Control versus curiosity.
Oh, man, Diana. Yeah, we're going to be really wise and careful, because both of us have seen amazing leaders, and both of us have experienced leaders who, out of their own brokenness, doing the best that they can, decide to resort to control. And what control does is it just breeds a culture of formal compliance at its best. It does not breed a culture of authentic buy-in and creativity. So I want you to think about Steve Jobs. Can you imagine having a Steve Jobs working for you like he did at Atari? He was the world's worst employee because his bosses just wanted to manage and control him. Well, how do you control a Steve Jobs? Why would you do that? And thank goodness that Steve Jobs had the awareness, or arrogance, maybe in his own brokenness, of just going out and unleashing his curiosity. But I think that when I am at my worst and I have people that I want better for, I will resort to control and fear and manipulation. True uncaged leaders understand that is human nature, to resort to those things when we're in our weakness. I believe the highest form of leadership is to be able to see somebody unlock the cage on their own and say, wow, what else could this be? And step into a reality that before was completely impossible to them. That's leadership. In fact, we've been around people who say that leadership is teaching people how to think. Well, I get that. Unfortunately, some of the people who say that it's teaching people how to think don't want you to think your own thoughts. They want you to think their thoughts. What I want us to do is to help leaders like, what is the greatness inside of you? Let's call that out because I don't know what it is, but I could sure ask enough questions to find it.
Well, it's like I heard a story about this person that owned a paint store. And one of the kids that worked there started putting all these paint things together. And he started on Instagram and Facebook and talking about this color means this. And if you put these two colors together, this is what it looks like. And he started helping people determine what colors to use in their home. Well, the followership just started going crazy and the comments. And so he went to his boss and he said, look at what we've created here. And if we did this as a company, would we sell more paint? Well, the leader got all upset because he wasn't in charge. He wasn't the one that came up with the idea. His ego was up here and this kid was doing better than him. And who are you, right? So he fires the kid. The kid literally goes down 3 blocks, opens up a paint store, does exactly what he said he would do, takes over the guy's business. The guy actually ends up going out of business. True story. And I'm just sitting there. How many leaders have we been around and or the people that are listening that have been around that said my way or the highway, or you're not doing this right? Instead of coming from curiosity and say, why did you think that way? What was it that was happening? And let's say that you're a control leader. So how does a leader rebuild after being that fist that comes down on everybody?
Yeah,
Because
I
it
think
comes from fear. It really comes from
oh,
fear.
and you know what? Honestly, it comes from, I think, Diana, and maybe we could have this conversation. I think
Yeah.
people who resort to control, it comes from a combination of really, really good intentions and a
Yeah,
huge brokenness of fear. And the only way that they know how to get the best out of people is to intimidate, is to create this kind of fear. So if I find myself controlling, I need to step back and evaluate where's my fear come from. As a leader, it's like people, people will never it's Maxwell's law of the lid. It's
yeah,
if I have this lid on people, at some point they're going to either become compliant and not creators,
right.
or they're going to need my leadership lid to grow so that they can expand inside my world. I think one of the stories I came across, which I've never heard anybody talk about, I don't know if you're familiar with Spencer Silver. He was a chemist and he
No.
worked at 3M and he was
Oh,
given millions of
yes.
dollars to go out and invent the world's greatest adhesive. I thought I'd find a story you wouldn't know, but of course you know
No,
this
and it's
story.
about the greatest notes that we ever have, right?
That's that's exactly right. And he got done with this thing, and this glue was not the strongest glue on the planet and felt like it was a failure. And 3M put it on the shelf until Arthur Fry was sitting in church one night, going through his choir hymnal, and he was sticking pieces of paper to hold tabs, and the paper kept on falling out of his hymnal. And he goes, "There's got to be some sort of solve where I could stick something on my paper, and it comes off without it tearing up the paper."
That's
He went
right.
back to back to Spencer Silver's glue, and it was perfectly like that. Therefore, Post-it Notes was born out of a failure and out of a leader being curious enough and saying, what else could this be? And he found another application for the same thing. And so here's the thing. We live in a world of unlimited possibilities, Diana. We live in a world where we have human beings that are created in the image of a creator who is creative. I mean, look at a giraffe. I mean, good grief, who thinks of a giraffe and a zebra? He's infinitely creative. What would the world look like if we learned how to lead out of curiosity and awareness, still standing for standards, still standing for vision and direction of where we're going to go? What would leadership look like today? That's my question that I woke up and said, I've got to write a book about that.
You know, leaders, they come in all sizes,
That's right.
all shapes, man, woman, doesn't matter what race you are. Leadership, well, we lead ourselves, number one. And a lot of people don't see themselves as leaders. I think that that's where John Maxwell did such a great job because Peter Drucker was all about management.
That's right.
Nobody talked about leadership when John started teaching 50 years ago about leadership, right?
Yep.
And yet, even right now, you're talking about this uncaged leader. And I do believe leaders live in a cage. They all have their own way of doing things. Some of them get upset if you start becoming more popular than them. I call it whack-a-mole. You lift up your head, whack, let's push you back down right
Oh,
away.
we could
And
share stories, couldn't we, my friend?
so I want to know, what do you think this uncaged leader looks like at home, not just in business? Because who you are is who you are.
That's right.
You
Everywhere you
can't
go,
be
there
two
you are.
people,
That's right.
right?
Yeah, and I really, there's a book by Ellen Langer out of Harvard Business School on mindfulness, and she really debates the idea: are we body, soul, and spirit, or are we all just one? And I think we're all just one. I don't know that there's a
I agree with that.
dichotomy. And honestly, I think the highest form of leadership, one of the highest forms, is I've got 4 grandbabies, and to see my daughter leading a 4-year-old, that is an extremely high form of leadership. There
That's
is no leverage to get that child to learn how to read, and she's teaching them
wow.
in school. And so I think you're exactly right that the mom of a 2-year-old that is to lead that child, that's leadership. The person that's in real estate sales, that's leadership. If you're working at a drive-through because that's what life has handed you, be a leader there. Learn to influence people to accomplish a purpose.
It's very interesting to me how a lot of people think they need a title to be a leader. And they're a leader, just like you said, your daughter with a 4-year-old, and you lead that 4-year-old different. And there's a lot of people that they get older, they just don't mature. So this leader that is a mature leader, they're reading, they're learning. What are some things that you have admired in leaders yourself, Lucas?
Well, one, I'm talking to one of those leaders. And a funny story is you and I sat in, I think we sat in a meeting one time where we were both taking notes and learning, and you were massively distracting because you kept on pushing a Denver Broncos mug over in front of me, which as a Kansas City Chiefs fan, that was really hard to swallow. But one of the things I learned from even sitting at meetings with you is no matter what was being said up front or it's material that you were already knew and mastered, you're constantly taking notes and you're constantly writing questions. And I know that as a journal, you journal, what did I learn today? And what am I becoming? And all those things is like, if every day I wake up and say, life is a classroom, I am a student, life becomes exciting because I don't have a fixed mindset. I've got a very open mindset. And honestly, fixed mindsets for me are so de-energizing. Just when I have it in myself, it's just like, if I already know that I know that I know. So I just took up a new hobby. My son is in his 30s now, and we're trying to figure out things that we could do in common. And I used to be in my 20s, I would go fishing, go bass fishing.
Yeah.
Well, my son is getting into fishing. So I went out, bought a little fishing boat. I don't know what the heck I'm doing, Diana. It's like when I back that trailer up, it's embarrassing. All these fishermen are laughing at me backing up a trailer. It is so energizing because I don't know what I'm doing, and which is just perfect for me because when you step into areas you don't know, your mind opens up to new possibilities and you understand, gosh, my insecurity is coming out at the boat ramp.
Well,
Right?
or they give up. And see,
Right.
I just want to honor you. My husband is the same way. His son, he had a son, and Tony loves football. He loves sports. I mean, he was a coach, for heaven's
Yeah.
sakes, right? He took the wheelchair basketball team all the way to nationals in Hawaii, taking the national championship as a coach. So he is so excited to have this son that's going to play football and basketball and who knows what. And he likes to bird watch. And so Tony literally became a bird watcher.
That's right.
See, to me, that's leadership
That's
at its best. You becoming a bass fisherman, backing up a boat. And that's not easy, by the way, because I had 2 kids that loved water skiing, and I had to back up the boat. So I get when you turn this way, you have to literally turn
Just go backwards.
Yes, it's like you got to recross. That's leadership, though. Going to where people are at and meeting them where they're at and lifting them up, helping to guide and direct and getting them to think differently. So as we kind of come to a little bit of a close here, I just want to ask, in your book, when I read your book, what is it that you desire for me to come away with? And you just say, Dianna, if the people that read my book could implement this, this, and this, what are those 3 things that you would like them to implement?
Yeah. First is be aware that much of our life is governed on autopilot thinking. And it's not wrong. If somebody pulls out in front of you, a car pulls out in front of you, I don't want you to sit around, think about I want you to react. Go into autopilot, figure that out. So I'm not saying all autopilot thinking is wrong. It's just when it doesn't serve you any longer. So I want people to be aware that most of our lives are governed by habits and thought patterns that we've thought the same thing that we've thought for the last 59 years. Question that, be more curious. Number 2, I'd like people to consider that you could choose impact or income, and sometimes you can't choose both. If I have to choose, I'm going to choose impact because the income always comes. Money is just a math problem. Dianna, I want to close with this story that you were like one of our coaches and one of my mentors back when I moved from Houston, Texas to Kansas City to become a team leader in a KW office. And I was very blessed. I stepped into a wonderful situation with a wonderful family, and we did some really good things in this brokerage that I was part of. And I was getting some recognition from the outside and starting to make money from, especially as a former pastor that never thought I'd make any money. So I started to make some money. I'd taken a course that you'd written, Bold, and my life was changing. But my mom at that time was fighting cancer, and she had beat it 3 or 4 times. And there was a moment, Dianna, when a doctor came over to the house. When the doctor makes a house call, it's not going to be a good call.
No.
And said, Chung, listen, there comes a point in time in life when everybody has to confront their own mortality. You're not going to beat it this time. You're going to have 2 months to live. The room fell apart, Dianna. I fell apart. I remember my mom sitting in that big green wingback chair. She didn't fall apart. She sat there and shook her head and said, what else could it mean? She didn't say that in those language, but she said, if I have 2 months to live, I'm going to really live.
Yeah.
2 weeks before she passed, she had me come over to the house. My dad needed to run some errands, so I needed to watch my mom. She barely could move. And my mom said, hey, Lucas, I want to have a conversation with you. I said, sure, Mom. She said, she says, I want you to know, I'm noticing all your, first of all, she said, you're going to do my funeral. I said, no, Mom, I'm not going to do your funeral. She said, you're going to do my funeral. And this is what you're going to say at my funeral. This is going to speak. She told me exactly what was going to happen. She was a very strong-minded Korean woman, and you didn't argue with her. And then she leaned in, Dianna, and she said, Lucas, I also noticed that in your career, you're doing really well, and it's obvious you're making some money now. And I want you to know, as a mama, I am so proud of you.
Oh, that's awesome.
She leaned in and she said, but Eddie, I need you to promise me something. Anybody can make money. I need you to promise me you'll live to make a difference. And in that moment, I made her a promise that resulted in me putting the things that I had learned to get myself uncaged to certain levels. And I'm still in that journey and still in that process of becoming more and more uncaged. And I put it in a book because I made a promise to my mom that I wouldn't live just to make money. I'm going to live to make a difference. So 100% of the profits from this book, if there are any, I'm going to give away to stopping human trafficking. We're going to make a difference by helping leaders get uncaged.
And that in itself is a whole different subject. I think when you talked about income versus impact, income is about us. It's self-centered. Impact is about others. It's outwardly focused. And in my book, I talk about write your eulogy right now and then reduce it down to what is it that you want to be known for when your time on this earth ends. And mine was she added value and made a difference. And it sounds like you and I have a lot of the same things in common. We do want to make a difference for others, and that's what makes you a great leader. And our story, got to write a new one. Folks, listening to this, I trust that you will go right now. Don't hesitate. Go order the book and make certain that this book that you order is by Lucas. Lucas, tell us once again, it is actually called The Uncaged Leader. And you want us to go to Barnes & Noble on their website to pre-order it. It comes out August 11th. Pay for it now. That's a real commitment, because on August 11th, when it shows up, it'll show up right at the right time, just as you need it. and you too can get out of the cage that you've unconsciously built for yourself. So, Lucas, thank you so much for today.
Thank you,
Is there
Diana.
any
Really appreciate
last thought that you want to tell everyone?
it. Well, I wanted to say just honor you because a lot of what I've written in the book, I've learned from you and the organizations that you've led. And so I appreciate the impact that continues to be made because my kids are living in the impact that you've made on my life and Tony's made on my life. And so thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, and I still think one of the things that was the most fun is having the thing between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Broncos. And it still keeps going today. What can I say? Even though you're in Colorado and your daughter just got married, I mean, I've watched her grow up and I've watched your leadership with them. From pastor to a great business leader that still cares about people, that still has a heart for making a difference, and that always wants to help people reach their potential. So thank you for being with us today, Lucas, and I so appreciate you. If you've enjoyed this, please hit the subscription button below on Becoming More, because you too can become more by making a new story for yourself.